Hello, Hoopheads, and welcome back to Jersey Jump Shot, New Jersey's first and only podcast dedicated exclusively to college basketball in the Garden State. I'm Jerry Carino. With me, as always, is Steve Edelson. And as the calendar turns to December, we're joined by a guest who is every bit as Jersey as we are. He's won everywhere he's been. Tournament of Champions title at St. Pat's High School, 2 NCAA tournaments as a center at Seton Hall, helped the Hall win 2 Big East titles as an assistant coach to Kevin Willard, now in his second year running his own program at NJIT, and he brings the Highlanders to visit Seton Hall Wednesday at the Rock. They're 1-8, but with one of the youngest rosters in all of Division I. Welcome, Grant Billmeier.
How you guys doing? Thanks for having me on today.
Oh, we're doing well, Grant. We're doing well, and it's good to see you. We appreciate you coming back on. Of course, we're keeping an eye on NJIT. And let's start with a big picture question. Grant, last year you brought in a huge freshman class and you had a bunch of post-grads to help bridge the gap. This year your team is almost entirely freshmen and sophomores. Obviously, we know it's hard to get transfers into NJIT because its academics are so good. What's it like building the old school way in this transfer portal era?
It's it's very challenging, Jerry. Every day you just got to be very basic. Your message has to be consistent. You got to make sure there's no confusion. How you game plan with, 18 and 19-year-old kids is a little different than how you game plan when you have a Miles Kale or, when I was at Maryland, a kid like Jameer Young who could pick up certain defensive schemes because, they've been playing, 3, 4, 5 years of college basketball. But when you have so many guys that are, still trying to figure out college basketball, you got to try to keep it really consistent. Try to eliminate the thinking and just let guys go out and play with confidence.
Grant, you have 2 really talented sophomore guards in Tariq Francis and Sebastian Robinson. I'm curious what kind of growth you're seeing from them in games. And do they remind you of anyone you played alongside or maybe coached at Seton Hall?
They've really been developing. We went out to Cleveland. We played extremely well. Lost at the buzzer to a good Cleveland State team. And then, we got back to the hotel around 10:30 at night and turned around and beat Morehead State the next day. Both of those guys were all tournament team. Tariq played exceptionally well yesterday on that road to UMass. We dug ourselves in a hole a little bit, but, once he got going, we were able to cut it to 7 in the second half. So both of them are playing well. Tariq really has the ability to score the basketball. What he does now really fits the modern day game because of his ability to shoot the basketball. And, Sebastian's a bigger guard, 6'2", 6'3", strong physical guard. And he's really developed and matured over the last year.
Tariq's averaging 19 points a game, and Sebastian's a Jersey guy from Montclair, played at Roosevelt Catholic. Grant, you lost a couple of last-second heartbreakers. You referenced Cleveland State, Penn in the opener. You've taken some challenging road trips, as we know mid-majors do this time of year, Villanova, GW, UMass, like you just mentioned. Let's be honest, you haven't done a whole lot of losing in your life. League plays obviously where it's at for you guys in America East, but how do you keep everyone focused and moving forward when the final score isn't where you want it to be?
Yeah, I think, you have to look big picture. We're not getting an at-large bid to go to the NCAA tournament, not even a program that's, one of a premier mid-majors in Vermont's not getting an at-large bid. So the biggest thing is, man, we just got to get better. As we played a lot of games, but at the end of the day, Jerry, we played Penn less than a month ago. So we're still basically a month in from the start of playing games to now. And, we've gone through some growing pains, obviously, which, I kind of expected with a challenging non-conference schedule. But I think we're progressing in the right direction. And, you want to try to survive your non-conference schedule and then come out and, use that time to get ready for a really good America East, which I think is going to be a really good conference this year.
Great. You may have heard King Rice's comments after the Seton Hall game when he was speaking about their star guard, Abdi Bashir, kind of issuing a plea to other coaches to wait until the end of the season to contact him about possibly transferring. I'm curious what you think about that and how much of an issue is tampering and what can you do about it in your position?
Yeah, it's kind of the reality. People are always trying to be one step ahead. It's challenging because, there's really little to do. Everyone kind of knows tampering goes on, but I agree with King. Be respectful, fellas. Let the kid enjoy the moment. Let the kid get better. Let him, have a great year. And then, the springtime, things are going to play out the way it's supposed to. But for now, let him stay in the present moment and not worry about the future.
Yeah, it makes a lot of sense, and it's good to hear that sentiment among mid-major coaches for sure. Wednesday's, going to be the first time you're bringing in opposing teams to your alma mater as a head coach. Grant, we know you hosted Seton Hall in an exhibition last year in your beautiful gym in Newark. Seton Hall is a place where you're held in very high regard, and I'm sure you'll get a great reception from fans and everybody there. What's that going to be like for you? Have you given any thought to that at all?
To be honest with you, Jerry, I haven't. We played a really tough, as I'm sure tough, hard-nosed Frank Martin team yesterday.
Right.
After I watched our game on the bus, I started diving into Seton Hall, and I got to figure out, come up with a game plan to put my guys in position tomorrow to be successful. So it's really not about me. I had an unbelievable 15 years at Seton Hall, and I hope my guys can go in tomorrow and put in and I just focus on them and such a young team, and just put them in position to be successful. And if I think about anything else, then I won't be doing my job.
Fair enough.
Now that you've had a chance to look at a little Seton Hall film, what do you think of the Pirates and maybe some of the challenges Shaheen is facing this season?
They're Seton Hall basketball through and through. They're elite defensively. They're going to get up. They're going to guard you. They're going to disrupt you. They're going to get after any pick and rolls. They're going to switch out and blow things up and take things away. So they're really going to guard you. And then I think they got some really good perimeter players, and I think their front court guys from the beginning of the year to now are developing. And I think I think typical Coach Holloway's teams, they're going to be right in the mix of things. And I know they had a challenging last game, but I think that happens a lot of times. You come back from a 3-game MTE where you play 3 games in 4 days. Your guys are shot. That happened with us a lot, and it just takes guys some time to get back. And they had an emotional trip down to Charleston, and it just takes guys some time. But I know he'll have them ready to go Wednesday. So just getting ready for that.
You speaking of coaches you're familiar with, you host Wagner December 14th, and of course, the Seahawks are led by your old friend and teammate Donald Copeland. You guys helped Seton Hall reach 2 NCAA tournaments together. What was it like coaching against him last year, and what was it like for you to see him lead, a shorthanded team into the NCAA tournament last March?
Just kind of what I expected a Donald team to look like. Just relentless. Just how Donald was. Donald never settled. Just every possession, every play as a player was life and death, and that's the way he coaches, and that's the personality that his team takes on.
What is it about Seton Hall that produces so many coaches?
I just think to play at Seton Hall, it's not this like no one goes to Seton Hall because they go there and they get blown away on their official visit, right? Like you don't go to Seton Hall and say, hey, you know what? I hung out, I went to these parties Friday night. I got to experience the tailgate Saturday afternoon, then went to a football game, and then, we did this Saturday night. You don't go to Seton Hall because of anything other than basketball. So I think when you make the commitment to go to Seton Hall, it's basketball based. And obviously you get a terrific education. But I think, 99% of the decisions to go to Seton Hall is basketball related. And, it's got a great fan base, a great arena. They're building a great practice facility. But I think you go to Seton Hall for the right reasons, then that's basketball and education. And I think guys that have that mindset wind up being successful.
As you get going in year 2 of your tenure as a head coach, Grant, what's the biggest thing you've learned about running your own program that maybe you didn't know beforehand or couldn't know until you actually did it?
It's a lot of work. It's a lot of work. Every decision that's made is a big decision when you're in this seat. As assistants, Coach Willard delegated a lot of responsibilities to assistant. But, when you're sitting in that big seat, ultimately every decision is yours. Even the things that you lead on to your assistants, you got to make sure it's done the way you want it done because, it's your program, it's your record, it's everything that falls on you.
How often do you find yourself texting Kevin for advice or when you have a question?
Yeah, good amount. He was able to come to my George Washington game. We spent a lot of time talking after. And then I saw him and his family when they came to town to play Villanova. So we've seen each other in person twice in the last few weeks, which was nice. But yeah, we're in constant talk. I text him when he wins. He texts me after a win, or just saying, what's going on, how can I help you, different things. So it's it's great to have him, and I have Greg Corenda, who I'm in constant communication with. It's great to have guys that have done it both at the highest highs, and Coach Renda doing it at FTU.
Right, and Greg's at Elon now, right? He's an assistant.
Yeah, he's an assistant at Elon,
and they're pretty good this year too.
They are pretty good. I think they came up here. They lost a good Maine team, and then I think they beat Penn and Navy. So they're having a good year themselves.
We know Greg well, and he's been interviewed by us many times. So we're glad to hear he's doing well, and good to hear his name. So, a couple more for me, Grant. To any player who wants to be a college coach someday, what's your single biggest piece of advice about making that transition from on the court to on the sidelines?
The time commitment, man. It's it's a huge sacrifice. My first 2 years at Seton Hall, I was single before, I started dating my wife. And I just remember, Jerry, I'm sure you remember it. We played UMass at 11 a.m. on that Saturday in Walsh. And I remember the game ended at 1 o'clock, and just going back to my apartment. I literally didn't leave my apartment all weekend. I just slept. And, it was a combination.
NIT, right? NIT.
Yeah. It was a combination of doing film, but also, chasing her Pope around. And I really realized, man, this is not a job that's easy. And, when I started dating my wife, I said, this is what it is. This is what it entails. It's a lot of hours. It's things that come up at the last minute. And you just got to make sure, whoever you decide to be in a relationship, they understand the profession. They're good with the profession. And you got to make sure that they love basketball. And fortunately, my wife grew up in North Carolina, which is a big basketball state. And she loves the game of basketball. So that certainly helps. It certainly helps that, she understands, when I'm not around, when I'm recruiting, the value of that. And she's very supportive.
That UMass game you're referencing in the NIT was one of the rare Seton Hall games I missed over the years because my daughter had just been born, Grant. So your kids are 6 and 3 now. Is that correct?
Yeah, that's correct.
How many games did they attend?
You know what, Jerry? It's been tough because we haven't had any weekend home games.
That's what you need for that age.
And with them being in school, it's hard. It's hard because, if they get home late and then I'm in the office the next day, then your wife's dealing with waking them up and being cranky. So as much fun as they might have at night, they're going to be a disaster the next day. But like they're coming up here this weekend for the Navy game, which would be awesome. It's an afternoon game.
But you're getting home late at night sometimes, Grant, from these games, and who knows what time you're walking in the door, and then that alarm goes off. That you got a child in first grade, right? I mean, what time? How much sleep are you getting, really?
Not much, Jerry. Not much. As John Rothstein would say, we sleep in May. We don't sleep in March. We don't sleep in even May. We'll see, depending on what we need to bring in transfer wise.
All right, last thing for me, and we appreciate your time, Grant. During your time as an assistant at Seton Hall, you were known for getting on the court and getting after it with the big men you were coaching. Are you still doing that at age? Well, let's say you've crossed a milestone age recently, and if so, how sore are you the next day?
Yeah, I'm still getting down there. I'm still banging with our forwards. My body's holding up, man. It's
all right.
It's holding up. I try to do a lot of stuff, especially in the off season, prepare myself for the season. A lot of stretching, a lot of running. I don't know how many more years I have in me, but I know I got today, and then I'll see how I feel tomorrow. But I've had ACL and MCL surgery on both knees, so I don't have to worry about anything happening to my knees now that I have no knees anymore. So just trying to get to the next day at my age.
Tyrese Samuel has said he never learned more than he did from banging with Grant Billmeier on the court at all hours of the day and night. So it's good to hear you can still get after it. Our old friend Grant Billmeier, NJIT, he's building something over there, building it the old school way. Got some talented young guys. He's bringing them to the Hall Wednesday. It'll be a nice reunion, whether he wants to admit it or not. There'll be a lot of people who feel good about it. He'll be there for business, but I'm sure people will enjoy seeing him. Grant, thanks so much for coming on Jersey Jump Shot.
Thanks, Jerry. Have a great day, man.
All right. Good to see you.
All right,
Steve, always good to see Grant Billmeier. Brings back a lot of good memories. He was a part of a lot of pivotal moments in Seton Hall basketball as a player and a coach, right? And you know that he has some challenges at NJIT that are unique because of the academics. You know, it's like an Ivy League level academic school, but you got to think that if someone can figure out that situation and do it as a Jersey guy, it's Grant Billmeier.
Yeah, and it would be great to see. It would be great to add another competitive mid-major, in the state, banging away with some really good teams in that league. So it's going to be nice to see as that program rises.
Yeah, so we'll keep an eye on him. Always good to hear from him, and we hope he gets a little bit of sleep over the holidays, although we know that's pretty unlikely in his profession and in this time of the year. All right, let's go around the state. Steve, first of all, a little out-of-state news, but New York metropolitan area. We definitely want to acknowledge the passing of Lou Carnesecca at age 99, legendary St. John's basketball coach, a godfather, a founding figure of the Big East. I spoke with PJ Carlissimo Sunday, yesterday. This is as of this taping, the day after the news broke about Louis' passing. And PJ had some great stories about how much Lou mentored him and the other young and up-and-coming coaches of that era. And there was a phrase that Carnesecca used to say to those guys, and it was "leave the chandeliers." In other words, you don't need to have everything. Have some perspective about your job and your life and what your mission is. And so leave the chandeliers. I thought that was pretty good. And Steve, you've watched a lot of basketball over the years. What went through your mind when you heard the news of Lou Carnesecca leaving us at 99?
Well, I think the first thing that came into my mind were those glory days of the Big East, through the 80s and into the 90s. I mean, that really took, I thought, college basketball in this area to another level. And he was such a big part of that, the rise of the Big East. And, I always remember that with Louis Carnesecca and him holding court. And, it was just a great time for college basketball.
I put this on the social media, but it bears repeating here that Lou Carnesecca is the biggest reason why my father and I started watching college basketball. My father grew up in an old school, baseball, football family where basketball wasn't really in the picture. And only when I was maybe 10 years old or so did he really start discovering college basketball. We kind of discovered it together. And one of probably the primary reason was because St. John's was so good, and they were on TV and it was so much fun to watch and electric. And here you had this character of a coach. And listen, let's be honest, it didn't hurt that he was Italian. His name ended in a vowel, right? That was important to my dad, but also he was just very New York and very much of a lot of charisma. And his teams obviously played great and they were filled with local kids, local guys. And so, yeah, that was the biggest reason I started watching the sport. So rest in peace to Lou Carnesecca, and thanks for everything you gave to college basketball, especially in the metropolitan area. Steve, the first net rankings are out. So they're not, it's pretty ugly. Rutgers is 86, Princeton 137, St. Peter's 184. For them, that's actually pretty good. Seton Hall's 200. What is your gut reaction to hearing those numbers?
A lot of work to do. A lot of work to do in the Garden State over the next few months. And everybody's kind of behind the 8 ball. So it will be interesting to see who can dig their way out.
Yeah, I think that's probably the three main programs in the state, right? Rutgers, Seton Hall, and Princeton are probably a little behind where they wanted to be at this point. And so Seton Hall's a lot behind, and the other two are probably a little behind. So we'll get into each of those right now. Let's talk, first of all, we want to open lead here with Monmouth, Seton Hall, because it's Jersey versus Jersey. You cover Monmouth as a beat. Obviously, you know a lot about Seton Hall. Let's talk about Monmouth's win, 63-51. And they won this game at the Rock, and they didn't just win it. They dominated it. They dominated the second half. It was never in doubt who the better team was. What does this win do for Monmouth?
I think this win can do a lot for Monmouth because I think they were better than 0-8. I went back and watched a lot of the game again, and I think what you just said. I mean, Monmouth didn't just win this game. I mean, Seton Hall never really could even challenge them in the second half. They were up double digits the entire second half. Monmouth played well. As much as Seton Hall is struggling now, Monmouth moved the ball beautifully on offense. And if I'm being honest, King outcoached Shaw in this game, right? They never could figure out the zone defense. He started his 7-footer for the first time, who really did a nice job inside battling, got 7 rebounds. I just think from a Monmouth perspective, there's a lot of good takeaways and a lot they can build on. Let's face it, Abdi Bashir is going to be a handful in the CAA. So it's going to be interesting to see Monmouth moving forward now.
Yeah, this is the third time I've watched Monmouth this season, like in person. I saw them against Rutgers when they played pretty well, and then they got blown out by Temple. But they look like, Steve, and I know Seton Hall's struggling, but Monmouth looks like a team that can maybe make a run and make a push in the CAA. Like, I don't think that's out of the question.
Yeah, and I think you talk to them, they throw the Temple game out. They just didn't show up for that game for whatever reason. But most of their other games have been good games. They should have beat Wichita State. They missed free throws down the stretch. They had those guys beat on the road.
Right. That would have been a really good win.
Yeah. So, the pieces are there. If they can just put it together now, get a little confidence, everybody's healthy. I think they can start to build something.
Let's talk about King Rice's comments after the game. And King, listen, this is what's great about college basketball, Steve, is the personalities is overflowing in the sport, right? Like, as opposed to like football. When you cover football, it's very dry and, very like, what's the right word? National security, like with what's divulged. And there's just the personality is sort of bled out of the game in the public sphere, at least. With college basketball, there's a ton of personality. And King Rice is obviously he's a good coach, but he's also a big time personality. We always want to get him after these games because he's going to say things that are enlightening and interesting and worthy of discussion. And he made a comment after the game about Abdi Bashir that was really, I think, a lightning rod comment that has gotten a lot of attention and peeled back sort of some of the veneer on what's going on in the underbelly of the sport right now. When he said he basically was pleading with other coaches, can you just wait till the end of the season to call this guy? Don't call him now and tell him to get into the portal tomorrow because, people do sometimes transfer mid-season when the semester ends in a few weeks. And his plea was, can you just let him finish the season? And it doesn't seem like much to ask. But the fact that he has to make a public plea is sad. And you and I both know. And so Grant, he basically corroborated this. This stuff is going on right now. So what did you think of that whole thing?
Well, it's interesting because King, since preseason, has been talking about Abdi and the opportunities he's going to have. Because he knows it. He knows how good this kid is. And then after scoring 38 at Rutgers, he talked about that post game. And I am sure after he scored 38 at Rutgers, I'm sure there was probably some issues. And that's why King now is bringing it up, after the Seton Hall game when he scores 28, right? Because he knows what's coming. And so, I thought it was interesting. And I think it's unfortunate that he has to do that he has to step up, at a press conference where they should be kind of celebrating this win, and they were, but also, kind of say, hey, guys, this is what's happening, and it needs to stop now, and leave my guy alone. And so it's unfortunate, really.
What gives King added credibility when he says these things is that, after the Rutgers game, he said, look, we know that at the end of the season, he's gonna make a mint as a free agent, basically, and I support that. And King has been very open about, like, come to Monmouth and use this as a stepping stone to the next level and make your money elsewhere. And so for King, who has been so open about that goal for his players, to then say, can you just back off until the season's over, just tells you how bad it must have been, right? After the Rutgers game, like you said, he scores 38. How bad must the tampering have been over the couple weeks between that game and the Seton Hall game for King to spout off like that after we know he's fully supportive of the guy entering the portal in March or April? It must be awful, Steve. And to me, what have we done? What have we done? And when I say we, I just mean college basketball community writ large. What have we done to this great sport by putting no restrictions on transferring, which is going to hurt people's graduation rates and lead to some bad decisions, by coupling that with the NIL, which has no rules, right, which has basically become pay for play with no rules in a lot of places, not everywhere. What have we done with you have to have some rules. There had to be some happy medium between the players having no rights, which was wrong, and Jay Billis with the Jay Billis world, which is there are no rules, right? And so there had to be some happy medium, but here we are with no rules, and this is a really bad, ugly side of that, and it's a turnoff. It's going to be a turnoff to a lot of people who follow this sport, Steve. So I give King credit for bringing it to light, but it really bugs me that it has to be brought to light because it's just not right. It's not right.
Absolutely. And I think what you're going to see is Abdi's going to have a great year. I mean, and I think Monmouth knows he's not going to come back next year. There's just no way. And it's probably going to be the same for Jared Valencia. And this is going to be kind of the constant churn you're going to see for mid-major programs like Monmouth. But
Abdi Bashir is not going to transfer in December. Like he's not going to leave King. But you know what? Some other guy might or will. Like somebody will. Right. It's going to happen. And when that some mid-major star somewhere else bolts for the portal in a couple of weeks when final exams wrap up, then you're going to remember what King said and know how bad it is. And so that, I think, needs to be noted on this program and in general for the college basketball fan. All right, what does this loss mean for Seton Hall? We don't want to take anything away from Monmouth because they did play really well. They were well coached. Bashir's terrific, and they're better than their record. That said, it was a historically bad loss for Seton Hall, not just to lose, but to really be manhandled in the game. And now this is your third loss to a mid-major. You're now 4-4 with 3 losses to mid-majors, especially after it looked like the Pirates had turned a corner, beating VCU and Florida Atlantic, 2 pretty good wins, 1 really good win, to go 2-1 in the Charleston Classic. It was a massive step backwards. And so Seton Hall, first of all, it reminds you, and I said this before the game, but it illuminates how important Dylan Adaiwusu really is for them. He's the defensive stopper on the perimeter. He's a 3-point shooter and just a guy with a lot of big game experience. So he was missing the game with the flu, and that really hurt them. Would they have won? I can't say they would have won if he played. He averages 7 points a game. But would he have done a better job on Bashir than all of the other guys did? Yeah, probably. He's their best perimeter defender. So that was glaring. I think maybe the fans should appreciate what he brings more, even though the turnovers sometimes are head scratching and, jaw dropping and whatnot. He does help them more than he hurts them. And they definitely missed him in this game. In the bigger picture, like Seton Hall's, that you have to look at this now as developmental year. I mean, where are they going to go with the 200 net and these 3 losses now hanging on their neck? The good thing for Seton Hall is, if you're looking for a silver lining, the Big East is down. And that may be bad in the long run for Seton Hall and all their teams. The Big East is having the worst year they've had. They are the worst non-conference they've had that I can remember, Steve. And so Seton Hall's not going to go 0-20. They're not going to have a DePaul-like year. I don't foresee that. I don't foresee that. I think they're going to win some of these games. They're going to be games where they play like they played against VCU down in Charleston. And that's going to be good enough to win some Big East games. However, that said, what it kind of shines a light on, I think, is how little margin of error Shaheen Holloway and Seton Hall have when you are operating maybe with less. And NIL wasn't why they lost this game, by the way. King mentioned like a handful of my guys who are making anything at all are making far less than $50,000. That's what he said. Seton Hall has guys making more than that, single guys. And yes, that's totally true. But in the big picture, when Seton Hall's roster building, they have to take chances. And like if 1 or 2 of those chances don't pan out, it's a lot more damaging for them than it will be for like Alabama. If Alabama brings in 6 guys and 2 of them don't pan out, well, the other 4 guys are studs. So they'll be okay. Seton Hall's bringing in 6 guys and 2 don't out. Those 2 guys, especially if they're at key positions, point guard, center, they're screwed. They're screwed. So last year they made a really good decision in the portal. They brought in the fill piece they needed in Jaden Bediako. It was a grand slam for them. And this year they haven't found those guys. I mean, Chauncey Jenkins has been good. He's been a good player for them. But in the other spots right now look like misses. There's time, but there's time for them to develop into players. But it just reminds you how little margin of error they have, Steve. They have to get their personnel decisions right. They have to get everything has to line up for them to be competitive right now.
Yeah, and I think tying into the margin for error, if you're going to shoot whatever they're shooting, 37, 38% from the floor, you're leaving yourself opens tonight like this where you're just not going to be able to make enough baskets. And I just think that they just don't have enough guys who are going to be able to step up and knock down big shots this season. And I think in this college basketball these days, you got to have those guys.
Yeah, and no one should lose faith in Shaheen Holloway as a head coach. The guy's been a terrific head coach. But, like, he's learning. You know, it's his third year as a high major. He's going to have to learn. Kevin Willard's third year at Seton Hall was his worst year. And he learned from it and got better. He got 6 years at Runway to get it right. Shaheen Holloway will get that, if not more, and he'll deserve it. He's going to have to learn how to adjust his philosophies to the modern day realities that he's facing there. That includes, do I need to prioritize things, shape my budget so I can get more shooters and maybe fewer players because shooters cost more? Those are the calculations he's going to have to make. There's no reason to think he won't learn, but like sometimes you have to lose to learn, you know, and then maybe that's part of what's going on right now. So we'll see. It's a long season, but they are facing some serious issues there. And again, we're going to see how it plays out. I do think they'll get better, but right now, certainly a low point for the Pirates at 4-4 with a 200 net. Rutgers performance in Las Vegas. They went 1-2, had a wild overtime win against Notre Dame, gave a good effort against Alabama before losing by 5, and then blew a second half lead and lost to Texas A&M by 4. What they got out of this tournament, Steve, they got to measure themselves against quality competition in a neutral setting. I've always believed that's invaluable. That helps you grow. That helps you later. And to me, there's a real identity forging type of trip for Rutgers that they can get a lot out of. You saw them defend better in Texas A&M game. You saw them rebound better against Texas A&M. You saw them be able to take a punch against Alabama and Texas A&M and punch back. There's something to be said for that. You know, you saw Jeremiah Williams come on as a third scorer. If that sticks, that's a huge development. So, and I will never say lose to two really good teams in a neutral setting like that's bad for you. No, I don't think it's bad for them. Would it be better to win the games? Yes, of course. But these can be growth opportunities for Rutgers. On the flip side, there are things that get exposed, right? When you play that kind of competition without the crutch of your home court. And what got exposed for Rutgers was, well, they're rebounding in the first 2 games, which they did improve on, but that this team has to learn how to win. Closing out games is a learned skill, right? At this level, a team driven by 2 freshmen is going to have to learn it. And so especially in the A&M game where it was anybody's game with 2 minutes left, you have to learn that. And Seton Hall's, you know, they do have to get Rutgers they do have to get a little more out of their role players. Maybe this wasn't the best environment for a Zach Martini, for a PJ Hayes with these SEC teams, the way they're structured, the way they play. Probably better off in the Big Ten, different style, different athletes. But like they have to get a little more of their role players, and they got to do more, Steve, for those guys. Like if you're going to have Zach Martini and PJ Hayes, you have to run plays for them. You have to set up their shots. You have to run screens and have ball movement that gets them open looks. That's what they're there for. So they didn't really have that, and I will call it a learning experience. What did you take away from what they did in Vegas?
Well, again, I think there's so much upside potential with this team, and I think that's really what you're hanging your hat on. I mean, they're competitive. They're competitive with really good teams with 2 freshmen as their primary scorers and offensive players. So, you know, I just think there's a lot to look forward to with this team. I think they're going to get better. I think they're going to learn from those experiences. And, you know, there's a lot of talent to work with there.
Yeah, Rutgers played well. I mean, those games were exciting. It was good basketball to watch. They played well. And they had things where they broke down defensively times and got beat up on the glass a little bit and some late game execution flubs. But it was good. It was good basketball. They still look like an NCAA tournament team to me. Yeah. I want to tip the hat to Matt Alaka, who was just brilliant for Notre Dame. Princeton, 4-year Princeton man, helped him get to the Sweet 16. Rutgers prioritized him in the transfer portal, Steve. He was the number one priority for them, and he got away. I mean, he's a Midwesterner. Notre Dame's got a lot of reputational cachet as an institution. Micah Shrewsbury's a good offensive mind. There could be many reasons why he wanted to go there instead of Rutgers, but Alaco is one that got away. And like people who say, well, how come Steve Peichel didn't add this guy or that guy? Well, they don't have a money tree. They've devoted all their resources to that freshman class. So they got who they could get to fill roles, but Alako was a guy they wanted to fill a role. And you see how good. I mean, how about a backcourt with Matt Alako and Dylan Harper? Holy smokes.
Yeah.
With Dylan Harper on the ball and Alako firing away when teams double Harper. Holy smokes. It didn't happen. And I hate to tease Rutgers fans with that, but you can see the idea that Steve Peichel had when he's trying to put this roster together, how good he could be. All right. Cliff Amore, we saw him against playing for Alabama against Rutgers. He did not have a good tournament. He's been starting for Alabama, but he has only been playing, less than 20 minutes a game. He really didn't play well, have much of an impact. He played badly against Rutgers, and he didn't have much of an impact over the course of 3 games. And while I do think this team could really make something out of Cliff, like the way he would have fit with the way they play would have been really good. You can't begrudge the guy. He got his degree. He went elsewhere. You can't begrudge him for, taking who knows how much money and just going to a different setting for him. I don't think Rutgers had a chance to keep him, Steve. I don't think they weren't going to bid that high. And I think he wanted to change the scenery, and you can't blame a guy when he gets his degree for wanting to change the scenery, right? So it was kind of sad to see Cliff be a non-factor in this tournament, but I mean, you can't, if you're Rutgers fans, and I think they know, no one's holding any grudges against this guy for leaving.
No, it's college basketball today, right? I mean, this is the way it goes, and you wish them well, and it's nice to see them down the road sometimes. So
I do wonder. A small piece of me does wonder what Jay Young could have done with Cliff. Right, Jay left right before Cliff came, and he comes back right after Cliff leaves. You do wonder what a master big man coach like that could have done with a talent of that nature. All right, so Rutgers is 86 in the net, which means they have some work to do. Right, it's a long season. They have some work to do. The goal, a reasonable goal was never for Rutgers to be a 1 seed in the NCAA tournament. All right, there were going to be growing pains. The goal for them was going to be to get in with a shot to make a run. And so they're really, based on what they did in Vegas, I don't think it hurts them much, but what it does do is it puts a lot of emphasis on their Big Ten opener at Ohio State, which is their next game. There's a chance for a quad 1 win, and it almost certainly is the only chance Rutgers is going to have for a quad 1 win in the month of December. If they don't win at Ohio State, they're almost certainly going to go into January, into 2025 with 0 quad 1 wins, which then you get into a little worrisome territory. So I do think while the first game out of a 20-game conference schedule is only 1 of 20, I do feel like there is some importance for them at Ohio State at noon to come out, not just playing a good game, to actually get over the top with a win on Saturday, Steve. Your thoughts?
Yeah, I mean, listen, after what they went through in that tournament, I expect this to be quite a game. I mean, I think they're going to learn from that. I think they have obviously the talent to go into a place like Ohio State. I think it's going to be a good test, and I think they're going to play well.
Yeah, and I just don't see, Dylan Harper was just so brilliant, right, in this tournament. I mean, we've never seen a freshman like this in New Jersey, Steve. Never. I mean, Quincy Doobie, as great as he was, and his junior year was absolutely brilliant. He was never this as a freshman. Miles Powell became a first-team All-American. He was never this as a freshman. So for Dylan Harper to score 35-plus points in 2 games against Notre Dame and Alabama was special. Now, you saw Buzz Williams, who is the best coach Rutgers has faced so far this season. That guy is a really, really good tactician. You saw him come up with a scheme that stopped Dylan Harper. Now, when I say stopped him, he scored 18 points, but he shot 6 of 20, and at the end of the game, he couldn't. They were trying to run their offense through Dylan, and it didn't work. So, I don't know that every team's going to be able to do that. Not every coach is Buzz Williams. Not every team has Texas A&M's athletes and ability to implement what they did. Basically, I mean, they were fronting 3 guys at the top of the key or across the foul line and saying, you're not getting in this lane. You got to score outside of driving down the lane. And they're able to do that without fouling. So that, I think not every team is going to be able to do that, although they're going to try. So, but you would, last thing on Rutgers, your thoughts on Dylan Harper and what he did out there. I mean, you've watched a lot of college basketball.
Groundbreaking, really. I mean, to see a freshman come in and do what he's doing. I mean, talk about living up to the hype. I mean, and obviously the Harper name is so important around Rutgers. To see him do what he's doing really is, it's in many ways, it's showing you the level that Rutgers can be this season. Right. Once everybody gets rolling, I mean, it's a great foundation.
the next step for Dylan is to finish these games, right? To make the finishing play in the last minute.
Right.
There's going to be so many close games, and you think he will get there. Like in an ideal world, he'd have a couple years to learn that, but he doesn't. It's a couple months, and so you think he's going to get there. He's smart enough. He's good enough to figure out how to finish these games. He's going to need some help from his teammates too. So that's sort of the challenge for Rutgers, who we still see them having a ton of potential. All right, real quick rundown. Princeton is they're 6-3. Their next 3 games at St. Joe's, which is 5-2 and good at 5-2. At Furman, which is 7-1. Monmouth at home. Princeton's playing to get in shape for the Ivy League season. St. Joe's, I'm probably going to drop in on Hawk Hill, Steve, to see Derek Simpson, Rutgers transfer, who's been starting for them and playing pretty well. Obviously, he's not their best player. He's sort of the third guard of the 3 guards, but he's helping them win games. Good little storyline, Jersey guy, local guy. So Princeton, I don't know, can they win 2 of these games out of the 3 at St. Joe's, at Furman, Monmouth at home? We know Monmouth's capable of beating them. If you beat Seton Hall, you can beat Princeton. So a little test for Princeton next 3 games. Can they sort of put it together before Ivy League play starts? And you'll be there when you'll be going to Jadwin, I'm sure, with Monmouth, right, Steve?
Absolutely. That'll be an interesting game now. Now it's got a little juice.
It does have juice because now you have some real star power. You have Abdi Bashir, who's this mid-major stud, national-level player. You have Xavier Lee, who's on NBA scouts' radars going against each other in the backcourt. I don't know that they'll match up totally one-on-one, but and then Caden Pierce, of course, who's a big-time college player. There's now some star power on both sides in this game.
Yeah, it's going to be a nice night at Jadwin. It really is. And,
good. You'll be there, and maybe I'll sneak there. Yeah. St. Peter's at FDU. I want to mention this wild game last week. St. Peter's won 78-76. Redshirt freshman Bryce Eaton drove the length of the court in 3.5 seconds for the game-winning layup as St. Peter's beats FDU in Hackensack. Bryce Eaton is averaging 9.8 points and 3.1 assists per game. Nice find for Bashir Mason. And Steve, 3.5 seconds the length of the court. I had a stopwatch on that replay. What would it take for me and you to go the length of the court in 3.5 seconds right now?
Let me tell you.
A scooter, a bicycle, an automobile?
That game was in Hackensack too, right?
Yes.
Yeah. So Monmouth got to the NCAA tournament in Hackensack against FDU with a length of the court drive back in the day. And, so it's
in
been
Monmouth's
done
NEC days. In Monmouth's NEC days.
Monmouth's NEC days, yes. Chris Kenny drove the length of the court, former CBA player, put Monmouth in the NCAA tournament. So that.
Good for St. Peter's. And they might win. They could be the favorite to win the MAC at this very moment.
Yes.
Could be the favorite. 3-3 at Duquesne. Tough game Tuesday. Good test. FDU's 3-6. They're at Fordham on Wednesday. Again, league play is going to be where it's at for them. They'll compete in the NEC. Riders 4-4. They open MAC play at Fairfield on Wednesday. So that's where we're at. 1 month in. It's December. It's getting cold outside, but it's heating up on the court. Thanks to Grant Billmeier for joining us. We'll see him at the Hall Wednesday, and we'll see you at the next Jersey Jump Shot. Thanks, as always, for tuning in.